I'm in the middle of reading Principles by Ray Dalio, the billionaire fund manager who's made a lot of money in the financial markets over his life. And this book has a lot of really good stuff in it when it comes to managing people and teams and running companies. And even though I'm not entirely finished with the book, I did come across this interesting idea that I wanted to share here. It's on page 61 of the 2017 version of the book, and it's describing some of the things his team was going through in the 80s and into the 90s as he was building out Bridgewater and was going through all sorts of volatility in the meantime. And Dalio highlights some of the mistakes that he and the team made, and to that he says, one of our most memorable mistakes happened in the early 1990s when the person in charge of trading at the time forgot to put in a trade for a client and the money just sat there in cash. By the time the mistake was discovered, the damage was several $100,000. It was a terrible and costly error, and I could have done something dramatic like fire him to set a tone that mistakes would not be tolerated. But since mistakes happen all the time, that would only have encouraged other people to hide theirs, which would have led to even bigger and more costly errors. I believe strongly that we should bring problems and disagreements to the surface to learn what should be done to make things better. So he and I worked to build out an error log in the trading department. From then on, anytime there was any kind of bad outcome, the traders would make a record of it and we would follow up. As we consistently tracked and addressed those issues, our trade execution machine continually improved. Dalio then says he implemented this across the entire company. He says, my rule was simple. If something went badly, you had to put it in the log, characterize its severity, and make clear who was responsible for it. If a mistake happened and you logged it, you were okay. If you didn't log it, you would be in deep trouble. This way, managers had problems brought to them, which was worlds better than having to seek them out. Now, this error log was and is a part of Ray Dalio's broader transparency strategy that he has with running his teams, where they try to air the issues for pretty much everyone to see so that they can actually work through them or avoid them for the future and learn from the mistakes. Now, the big drawback with a system like this, and Dalio does emphasize this in his book, is the fact that it's very uncomfortable to implement in the first place, and it might leave a lot of people upset, especially in the short term, since it can be embarrassing to admit your mistakes, especially to the rest of a team when you might have been trying to cover it up for better or for worse. And it's generally an unusual thing to post your losses in whatever setting it is. Typically, people like to focus on their gains, on their achievements, on whatever they've actually achieved in a positive light, not so much on their failures and the things that you can learn from those to avoid them. But on the same time, because that's unusual, it makes it that much more valuable because you're actually seeing something that you otherwise really wouldn't see in many other settings. And that really comes back to the culture of the team, and culture is by far the hardest thing to build in any organization, especially as your numbers grow and you get past a few people. But in order to implement a system like this, you have to have a pretty decent culture to start with, and something like this could make or break certain teams that maybe aren't ready for something like that. So there definitely is a right and a wrong way to go about this, and it's much easier said than done to implement something like this on a team. I'm trying to think about it from my own perspective in running a small business and building out a team. We're bringing on new employees and expect to have quite a few more in the coming months. So trying to think about those systems and how I want to onboard people, how I want to evaluate people going forward, and then how, when we run into inevitable mistakes, we want to address those. I don't want to punish people for every mistake that they make, but I definitely want to incentivize them to avoid them. And this sort of system that Dalio advocates for is a sort of way to incentivize someone to not make mistakes because you don't want to embarrass yourself to the rest of the team. But at the same time, you're allowing other people to take value from the mistakes in that they can learn from them and reflect on them. And the other point that he brings up is that if you do hide the mistake, you actually get in trouble for that rather than actually revealing it in the first place. Because it is clear that hiding the mistake from the organization is going to hurt everyone in the long run more than just addressing it right there. But that individual employee needs to be incentivized to reveal that mistake, and that's the inherent problem in the first place. If there's a key takeaway here, it's probably that leaning towards transparency is generally a better thing than leaning towards not being transparent or hiding things from other team members. And trying to create an environment where transparency is encouraged and supported is going to serve the organization well in the long run compared to the opposite. But it's probably going to be very uncomfortable in the short run to get used to it. Anyways, that's just one idea from Ray Dalio's Principles. If you want to copy the book for yourself, definitely check out the link in the description below and you can pick up a copy. But either way, thanks for watching.